I just want to close by saying that I know I speak for many people when I say that I'm glad to see that the President and the First Lady seem to be recovering from their episode with COVID. I think it's fair to say that anybody who's seen anyone or talked to anybody or dealt with anybody or any family that's dealt with COVID over the course of the past 7 or 8 months wouldn't wish that on anybody. It has been and will continue to be an enormous challenge for all of us due to its contagious nature and the unpredictable way it affects people of all ages. And for many, it will be and has been a fight for life, some of whom will win that fight and some of whom will not. That said, I think it's incredibly irresponsible for the President or any other public official to ignore the advice of so many of the folks in the public health, epidemiological, and infectious disease community who have made absolutely clear to us all, time and time again, that this is a contagion, it is massively contagious, and it will wreak havoc on many people if they become infected. But again, I'm glad to see that they're back home at the White House and seem to be recovering. And I certainly hope the federal government of the United States of America is able to continue to function throughout this difficult period.
The way that Trump handled his bout with the disease, is there any concern? He was saying that, don't be afraid of it. We talked to the woman from Framingham whose grandmother who's in the balloon. She said that her grandfather believed that not wearing a mask would be fine, and they say he passed away. How dangerous is it for what the president's portraying while dealing with the actual virus?
Well, I think part of the argument that's come from us and from the CDC and from folks like the mayor and others is that this is a very contagious virus, and it can have horrible consequences for people, period. And the amount of asymptomatic transmission that's out there and the number of people who will get it. I mean, part of what creates this sense of, oh, it's not that bad, is there are many people who will get it who will never show any symptoms. But they're perfectly capable of giving it to all kinds of people who will be horribly negatively affected by it. And I think all of us in public life, and I would include the president in this category, need to carry the message that while this thing may not be bad for some, it can be deadly for others. And if we are serious about being all in this together, we all need to do the things that stop the spread. And that starts with wearing a face cover.
But what he says, is that hurt the message, all the work you guys have done over the past 6 months? I mean, he just comes out of the hospital and barks out these outrageous things. Well,
his own CDC says you should wear a mask and says this disease is contagious and says for many people it can and will be deadly. And I have said many times, and so has the Lieutenant Governor, that we're incredibly grateful for the fact that here in Massachusetts, the message coming from electeds at every level is all the same. I mean, there are very few elected officials in Massachusetts, very few public health officials, very few researchers and scholars who are coming at this with any message that's any different than ours. And I do think that helps with things like compliance and participation. I mean, we talk a lot about the fact that if you walk around most downtowns in Massachusetts, the vast majority of the people are wearing masks. And whenever I hear somebody who says, it's not that dangerous, first person I think of is Robert Lewis Jr., who runs the base and is a good friend of mine and the Lieutenant Governor's. He came this close to dying, and he's in his 50s. And, the most alive guy you could ever spend time with. And on some level, it's a miracle that he's still with us. And there are plenty of stories like that. And then there are the stories like the one that you just told about somebody who was about my age who got it and didn't make it. There are 200,000 people who died from this thing. And many others who didn't die because they were saved by the healthcare system. It is a brutal, vicious disease for those it negatively impacts. And it is horribly contagious to begin with.